Alrighty, so we've had time to play it. Jaclappa, the Little Thunder God Mountain Thane. I'm going to talk about Mythic Plus first, then we'll talk about Raid. But for the short TLDR is that Mountain Thane is very good, and it has some decent applications. But let's go into Mythic Plus first and why you would or wouldn't play it. First and foremost, Mountain Thane is just simply tankier than Slayer. All Slayer has is a talent over here that heals you when you use sudden death procs, which is pretty mediocre. There's no overshielding, no DR. But Mountain Thane actually has keep your feet on the ground or steadfast as the peaks depending on what you need or what you want, which is a pretty valuable asset. This is just general DR. I did a key and this keep your feet on the ground buff had about a 49% uptime. I don't know if that's always going to be the case, but having 8% DR up half the time is, well, very good. So I definitely think it's quite good. I think there are applications where you might run Steadfast as the peaks if there's something that you need to survive a big one-shot hit from in higher keys, but you'll have to use Not Even Close and whatever for that to make sure everything is correct for that, since this is technically just 15% more health than this. But what would I play in Mythic Plus? Personally, you can play either of them, and they're both pretty close, actually. Mountain Thane, however, when you start getting into higher keys, because things keep living longer and longer, Mountain Thane starts to beat Fury Slayer in higher keys. I'd say 10 plus, just because things live long enough that you're actually going to do more consistent damage to packs, because once you blow your load as Slayer, you don't really have anything. You've got no Blade Storm, you've got no Odin's Fury, you've used all your cooldowns, you're kind of probably doing less damage than a tank if you have nothing going into a pack, so definitely that's one of the reasons why I personally really like Mountain Thane, because pack to pack I still have decent damage. Even though the peak isn't higher, the consistency is always there. And it still does quite well on bosses as well for single target. It's a little behind Fury Slayer on single target, but for the amount of additional AoE damage you're going to do throughout a key, I think it is well worth it for overall. However, once you start getting into the lower keys, once you're doing, let's say like 7s and 8s, stuff like that, Fury probably is going to do better in those keys, mainly because things are just going to die that much faster. And when things die fast, it means that when you pop your cooldowns and everything dies, and then you move to the next pack and you have no cooldowns, then you move to the pack after that, then you have cooldowns, you get in this nice cycle as Fury Slayer in these lower keys, where you essentially blow up a pack, recharge, blow up a pack, recharge, blow up a pack, recharge. And you can just do that throughout the whole key, and depending on what classes you're playing with, you can kind of swap which classes are blowing up which pack. So it's like, okay, well, I'm blowing up this pack, this guy's going to blow up the next pack, that guy's going to, and then I'll have something for the next pack while this guy also blows up that pack, right? And I think it flows a little better, especially when things are dying quicker. However, you can still play Mountain Thane in lower keys. I think it'll do a little less damage than Fury as Fury Slayer in the lower keys. But at the same token, because you're moving pack to pack, Mountain Thane is going to just simply have more general damage. So it is still possibly going to outperform Slayer in these lower keys damage-wise as well. So regardless of what you want to play, I mean, honestly, anywhere up to 10s, I think you can play either one. You can play Mountain Thane, you can play Fury, you can play Slayer. It honestly doesn't matter. But I do think that based on the amount of additional defensiveness you're getting through Slayer, as well as my preferential thing is that I just like being able to do consistent damage throughout the dungeon. That's certainly one of my more favorite play styles instead of having more burst AoE. I think Mountain Thane is probably going to be a far better pick for Mythic Plus, and in the upcoming 0.5 patch, if they add the buffs to base, raging blow, and bloodthirst. The buffs that they said they were going to add would buff those two buttons specifically. They wouldn't buff the crushing blow or bloodbath variant. It might even make something like anger management Mountain Thane pretty good in keys, since you're going to have way more wrecks, way more rampages, way more thunder blasts, and just way more uptime and more consistent damage compared to that burst profile. And that might be really enjoyable to play if those buffs comes through, so we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. But right now we're still playing Reckless Abandon. One thing you can do is you can put point, is if you wanted this point here, you could go back into Titanic Rage. The only reason I don't think this is really worth your time is, realistically, one of the main benefits of Titanic Rage is the fact that it enrages you, so it's a little easier to play with, but you get those 4 stacks of Whirlwind, so you go into a big pack, you pop your cooldowns, you Blade Storm, Crushing Blow, Bloodbath, Rampage, Crushing Blow, then you pop your Odin's Fury again, and because you have Titanic Rage, you have all those Whirlwind stacks, and it kind of accentuates that burst window a lot better. But because of Thane, you're actually pressing Thunderclap and Thunderblast a lot, because Thunderblast absolutely cranks. It does so much damage. Because you're just pressing this button a lot in your normal rotation, and even if it's a Thunderclap, you don't really need the additional 4 Whirlwind stacks, because you're using it so much that you're just going to have a lot of Whirlwind stacks, because it's going to be what you want to press anyway. So you lose a lot of the value of Titanic Rage. So putting a point into Vicious Contempt, I considered whether or not something like Unbridled Ferocity might be better for like consistent damage. But having a little bit of execute damage is nice, especially since you're going to be buffing your Bloodthirst and your Bloodbath. This build, because of how Mountain Thane works, there's not a lot of damage amps that the spec gives, but the actual hero tree itself provides a lot of additional damage through Bloodthirst and Rampage damage increased here. There's another, where's the other node? Raging Blow and Execute damage increased here, right? So just having these abilities do flat more damage means that something like Vicious Contempt scales a little better, because Bloodthirsters are doing 30% additional damage, and now it's going to do an additional 25% with that in execute windows on any mobs or bosses, that kind of thing. I primarily picked this up from Critcake's video, but even before Critcake's video, because it makes sense, right? It just makes a lot of sense. You're in your burst window as Thane, and you're just like, when do I press Odin's Fury? When I have all these Whirlwind stacks anyway, because I don't want to lose that benefit. But so now it makes Odin's Fury more of a actual damage cooldown you're pressing in that window, as compared to a buff getter button, kind of. And it feels better to play. Personally, it makes more sense to me. The only real difference with this playstyle is you're using your rec charging in to make sure you're getting your Rampage down before everything else is going off. But otherwise, you can either play this or you can play Slayer. You'll be totally fine. I do, however, I just prefer this. I think this build is just honestly a lot of fun. It's very defensive, it's very strong, and it might be even more fun with more cooldowns if we really get it back into anger management. And one thing that it does make me happy with is Rampage does a lot of damage in this build. A lot of damage, especially because they recently buffed this node to 30% damage on top of Slaughtering Strikes, all that good stuff, man, all that good stuff. This build just feels very good to play, and having Rampage actually be our top damage feels really good, since we have all of those modifiers, or that modifier in the base tree, whereas Slayer doesn't. Now, let's talk about Raid, because Raid, I think, is a bit different. And I think there are applications for both Thane and Slayer in Raid, but it has to deal mainly with timings. I think it's possible to play Thane on a fight like Brood Twister, because you're still going to do a decent amount of damage to the adds, but one of the main benefits and one of the reasons why you really run a Fury Warrior is you want that burst AoE to just eradicate all the little shitter mobs, and then you can deal with the snakes or with the worms and the big spiders, right? But you need to annihilate those infestors, otherwise it could cause problems. So it is possible if your raid is like omega blasting those infestors to the point where you playing Fury Slayer doesn't really make that much sense, then I think Mountain Thane has some potential in that fight. But realistically, you're going to be playing Slayer for most fights, simply because the timings just work out better. And being able to have a Odin's Fury into Blade Storm kind of whenever you want to kill big headsets is really, really important and very, very valuable, especially considering whenever you Odin's Fury, you get Avatar. So you just have a huge buffed window for just every Blade Storm you cast, and it just makes the timings just way, way better. I don't know if it's going to have really applications for something like Silken Court, where it's more consistent AOE. If I feel like it's right, I'll do some testing myself to kind of see how that feels. And having that additional damage reduction is going to feel very nice, especially on a mythic fight. So I don't mind. Once I get into that fight, I want to do some testing with Thane versus testing with Slayer, just to kind of see how it feels, if the timings work out, if things just feel good with that. And if they don't, then hey, Miss Slayer might just be the best for that fight too. I think Queen Ansurek Slayer is probably still going to be way better, just because, once again, the timings. The fact that you can get your Blade Storm back so quickly because of the Marked Dev execution stacks, and you're reducing the cooldown through sudden death procs, yada yada, just means that you're going to have, for the tombs, for the spiders, for the mobs in the intermission, you're just going to have that Odin's Fury into Blade Storm whenever you need it, whenever you want it. And I think that's what makes Slayer so valuable in that burst AoE profile that is going to be so necessary. That's going to be so necessary, not necessity, so necessary for those fights. So I'm pretty sure Slayer is still going to be the top dog in Raid. Thane has some potential, but I feel like Slayer is going to really be kind of the more valuable pick. Just because of kind of how things work out, right? Silken Court, like I said, because of the extended amount of time you're spending fighting these mobs, might see a bit more application, but we'll see. I'll do some testing on that. But otherwise, having just as overall, having the ability to play Thane or play Slayer kind of wherever you want. I didn't really think we were ever going to get this level of class of hero talent tuning to where it's actually kind of a choice you can make and be fine either way. The way I saw hero talents is it's going to be, hey man, these hero talents are just going to be better for this, right? Oh, if you're going to play this class, you're going to play this hero talent, right? If you're going to play Frosty K, you're going to play Deathbringer. If you're going to play Unholy, you're going to play Rider. But it seems like they're actually putting a decent amount of time into trying to tune these hero talents where it's like, hey, do you kind of prefer this thing? Well, here you go. It's decent. It can work. It's good enough that you can pick. And I think that's actually pretty cool. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun playing Slayer in Raid, playing Thane in Keys, having that kind of game switch up and style switch up. One of the funny things about playing Thane actually was when I first started playing it, I was so used to hearing Whirlwind, like the literal animation, like the sound of hearing the whoosh 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 and the hit sound effects of Whirlwind on mobs, to know that I hit a Whirlwind and I have Whirlwind stacks, was so ingrained into my mind. It actually took me a little bit of playing Thane to be like, oh, yeah, I'm getting my Whirlwind stacks. I hit the T-Clap. We're good. It's the same button, right? If you play Thane, you just replace Whirlwind with Thunderclap. Very easy. But the audio of it was so different that it took my brain a little bit to go, oh, wow, okay, yeah. You know what I mean? But honestly, yeah, that's kind of it. I don't really have much else to talk about in regards to that. I just think they're both viable in their own way and in their own areas of expertise, and I think that's really cool. And it is possible with the upcoming buffs to Bloodthirst and Raging Blow, if they go through on the 0.5 patch. We'll see exactly what more tuning they do to these classes. It might push Thane ahead of Slayer because of the nerf Slayer's scene, because of how it's doing well in the raid. But we'll just have to see, right? We'll just have to wait and see what happens with any additional buffs. But for right now, man, I am enjoying running Thane and Keys. Feels great. If you want to play Slayer instead, you're totally fine doing it. I think it's a little suboptimal to play Slayer, but you can do just fine either way. And even the optimization here of running Vicious Contempt, if you don't feel like doing that, right, you can still just run Titanic Rage. So that means when you pop your avatar and you're getting your Titan's Torment, you're getting your Enraged, and you're getting 4 stacks of Whirlwind by just hitting avatar. Or if you want to min-max a little bit, you can put the point in Vicious Contempt, and then need to make sure you are enraged before doing anything. But yeah, no, I'm very happy. After nerf after nerf after nerf of Warrior and feeling kind of dobby about it, getting some good buffs, letting Thane be better. I think, and even like another class I play, Outlaw Rogue, it feels really bad. I feel like Fury Warrior and Outlaw Rogue actually got hit a little too hard, just because they saw like the heroic logs and they just saw like the heroic numbers, where, like I was talking about, when things die really, really quickly, it makes Warrior look way better, because everything that we had at the time with Slayer was just condensed into this burst AoE. And if everything died in that AoE, we just had big DPS and nobody else could touch us. Well, once Mythic was introduced, things didn't just fall over. And once you start getting into higher keys, things just don't fall over. And once that happens, people started to go, we kind of over-nerfed this because of it. I mean, it kind of sucks to say that I think they over-nerfed our class because of heroic logs. It still performed well in the raid. Don't get me wrong. It still performed well. But being over-nerfed because of heroic logs just kind of sucked. But otherwise, no, man. Very happy. I think, realistically, like I said, just as a TLDR, Slayer is probably going to be your go-to in raid just because of how the timings work out and the required nature of burst AoE being far more valuable in a raid setting because you're there to do a specific job. In Mythic Plus, I think overall, Mythic Plus Thane is going to be better. It's a little weird to get used to at first, but I do think Thane is going to be a far better option for most players, since it's tankier, more consistent damage, yada yada. You can still play Fury Slayer if you want. It's not that far behind, realistically. But I do think Thane and Keys in Mythic Plus is definitely the way to go. And you're going to feel pretty good doing it. The only thing that's very odd about Thane is this is technically a flex point here. This Crackling Thunder point. Like, you can put over here in Pain and Gain or Second Wind or something like that. But because you have this talent point tax on Thane, because we need to get Thunderclap, it makes us a bit more awkward. Honestly, I kind of wish Thunderclap was just baseline and they moved Crackling Thunder over here. I think that would be a way better solution. We talked about it before, but maybe they want that talent point tax for us because they want us to feel like we're actually picking and choosing. But other than that, man, I'm totally happy with how things have worked out. I think we're doing great, and I do think that we're probably still a little outpaced by Frosty K. But I wouldn't put your Warrior down for Frosty K, because the way Frosty K is being seen in the eyes of the community right now, I've got a feeling it's going to catch a stray or two, which will either bring it equal to or maybe even lower than us in keys. However, Frosty K, because of how their talent tree is set up, they're very, very tanky, and Anti-Magic Shield is one of the most broken buttons in the entire game. You simply get to ignore mechanics. You can eat things other people aren't able to. It just has insane utility, and it brings grips, right? So I think Frosty K is probably still going to be meta in Mythic Plus over us. But in terms of raw damage, I do really think that we're going to be performing just fine, especially for title. After the constant nerfs, I was worried we weren't really going to be very title viable. I mean, you can get title on anything, right? But I felt like our class at the time was a little... Basically, I felt like our class was so much of a hindrance. I was like, man, do I even want to go for title for M Plus this season? But with these buffs, with how I'm feeling, nah, man. Feeling good. Feeling great. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have some fun with Thane. And, yep, that's it. Bye-bye.